Curiosity. Kill the rat. Curiosity. Kill the rat.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Curiosity Killed the Rat. I am Matt. I like learning all things science, and I hope you do too. I hope that's why you're tuning in today, because we have got my lovely co-host here, Kate.
Hello. As Matt said, I'm Kate. I'm the quote-unquote resident scientist of the show. I study neuroscience in real life, because podcast world is not real life, because I'm not going to be talking about neuroscience today. I just love all things science and love chatting about it, so hope you love listening to me. And guess what, Matt? This is episode 10.
Hey, that's a
Double digits, baby.
a
We made
decade of
it.
episodes. That's how it works, right?
What? No. But we've hit double digits. We've stuck to this. I'm so proud of us.
Yeah, me too. So what 10 episodes over 10 fortnights is 20 weeks, which is divided by 4.
An amount of time.
An amount of time. But yeah, no, 2020, year of the rat. Curiosity killed the rat. It works. It is the Chinese year of the rat this year, which is pretty.
That's.
I think it's pretty chill.
I
think
didn't
it's
know
pretty
that.
groovy.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Oh, I love us. I'm proud of us. Anyway, enough like patting ourselves on the back for hitting 10 episodes. People don't tune in to hear our ego. I don't think. I don't know.
Email us in at curiosityrat@gmail.com to let us know whether or not you listen to us for science or for our ego.
Or for ego. It certainly boosts our ego when you listen, I'll tell you that much. And when you email. Love the emails. Keep them coming, team. But no, anyway, let's move on to the science part. So today's science, we're going to be talking about ants.
Ants.
Which...
Ant-Man.
Ants. Which...
Ants.
I don't know. I can see you doing a weird like little clappy thing over the Zoom meeting, but I don't think the listeners can hear it. And I don't think anyone's getting this joke, Matt.
Everyone gets this joke. It's hilarious. It's top tier.
Right. Well, speaking of top tier memery though, the inspiration for this episode did in fact come from some top tier memery. In particular, I don't know, Matt, you're a member of the group, aren't you? The notorious Facebook group entitled "A Group Where We All Pretend to Be Ants in an Ant Colony."
Yes, I love this group. I joined it recently during isolation because there hasn't really been much else to do for me. And
yeah.
Oh man, it's weird, but it's a lot of fun. And like it started when I joined it, it was pretty big, but
it's
still
at
kinda
1.6 million members
Yeah.
now. I checked just before jumping on.
you know, I just want to say, I was a part of the group before it blew up.
Before it was cool. I was part of the group before it was cool.
Because like in the last couple of weeks, it has exploded.
Will it blow your mind to find out that it was actually started in June last year, June 2019?
I guess I'm
is
not
when
that
this
hipster
group
then.
first. Yeah, you're not as hipster as you think. And then it was only in April of this year of 2020, someone made like a viral tweet about the group, and it just like exploded in members. And I don't know, Matt, you can explain it better than me probably, but like what's the gist of the group?
It's basically just as the name of it says, a group of people where we all pretend to be ants in an ant colony. Basically, people just post photos in this group of like, I don't know, an orange slice that has been dropped on the ground and say something like, "I have found a delicious snack for our queen colony, help us bring it back to the nest." And then everyone just comments like bite and or carry, stuff like that, just like one word things.
Praise the
acting
queen.
as this weird hive mind working together. And it's really weird, but it's a lot of fun.
So much fun. It's a lot of fun. Good little bit of escapism.
A real goofy thing that I found has happened that I think is really fun. Because I can't remember if I discovered the ant group first or if I discovered this other group first, which was, I think I discovered this group first, where a Facebook group where we all pretend to be office workers working in the same office. So it's the same
Did
kind
the
of
ants
vibe.
invade?
The ants invaded the office group. So in the office group,
the ants
the
invaded
content
one
was
of my
normally
groups
just
as
like,
well.
going around being like, "Oh, Karen from HR wants you to bring up all the staplers or something. I don't really know office talk. But yeah, no, the ant group invaded the office group. And then there was just a running gag of like, oh God, there are ants everywhere. And then people who were a member of the ant group as well were commenting in all their ant speak rather than office speak. And it was just chaos for like a good week or so.
Yeah, they invaded the Atlantis group as well. It was a good funny time. Until they shut it down. But the point is, like, it's a good bit of fun, and like, there's a good reason I think why ants are so fascinating and why pretending to be an ant colony is just such like a wildly fun thing. Is because ants are insane, man. Like, I didn't realize the extent of it until doing the research for this podcast, but I had a fair idea. Like, I don't know if you remember, Matt, playing Ant Sims or Sim Ant or whatever it was called. It was like Sims.
Ants. I feel like no one else in the world knows what this game is.
No,
it's.
I don't know, it came free as a disc with like a cereal box as a kid, and it was essentially Sims, but you were an ant, and it's the same concept as this Facebook group, but like Sims. But it was like wildly accurate, and I don't know, I thought it was really cool, but now like researching ants again.
The black ants versus the red ants, and then I remember you could like bug spray. I don't know, man.
Ant colonies fighting each other, and then you had the queen, and the queen laid all its eggs, and like that's all like legit stuff. And then also, of course, the most, the most recent in my mind, I was going to say the most recent, but it's not the most recent. It's just because I happened to watch it last night. Ant-Man.
Yes.
I watched Ant-Man last night in preparation for this podcast, actually.
I'd like to hope you did a little more research as well, but I would honestly trust Ant-Man facts.
The entire science for this podcast comes from Ant-Man. No, it doesn't. Of course it doesn't. But I was actually pleasantly excited to see how accurate the ant science in Ant-Man was. Like, there's a lot of, suspension of disbelief in a lot of the elements of science in the Marvel Universe in general, but the stuff with the ants was pretty spot on, and I'll kind of go over that a bit, like, as I'm outlining these, like, these cool things about ants. But, like, to start off, I'm just going to hit you with some, like, fun ant facts. So, like, number one, so humans, Homo sapiens, we've been on planet Earth for about 200,000 years, right?
We've had a fair share.
The current estimate, until you hear that the current estimate that scientists have for how long ants have been around is 110 to 130 million years.
Cool.
They've been hanging out on this here planet just a wee bit longer than we have.
What do they even have to show for it? All that extra time.
Well, let
me
me tell you.
Single building.
Let me tell you. No, but like, oh my gosh, anthills. Anthills. I'm gonna break down anthills in a hot sec, and let me tell you, they are so much cooler than any buildings that humans have. But like, one thing I will say that ants do have to show for their long time here is that there is a lot of them. So there's over about 7 billion people on the planet.
I think it's like that at the moment. Yeah.
Yeah, so a rough guess for the ant population is currently at about 10 quadrillion. So that's 10 to the power of 15.
How many zeros is that?
15 one zeros. With 15 zeros, yeah.
So that's 5 lots of millions, right? No, thousands.
That's
yeah.
Oh, don't make me do arithmetic, but it's a heckin' lot. It is a heckin' lot. And so, like, to give you an example, right? So they have an equivalent biomass to us. So what that means is, like, if you got all of the ants in the world, that 10 quadrillion of them, and squished them together into a ball, and you weighed that ball, it would weigh about the same as if you got all of the humans on the planet and squished them together and weighed them.
Oh,
and if you think about it, how much does an ant weigh compared to a human, right? Like,
less.
Not Ant-Man. We're not talking Ant-Man. We're talking actual ants.
Like nothing.
For the moment. Yeah, absolutely nothing. So, but they have an equivalent biomass to humans. So that's just like, they're everywhere. And that was one thing that, like, in Ant-Man, right, there always seemed to be ants available when they needed them. And in the past, I was like, yeah, that's a bit unrealistic. But, like, upon further research, no, ants are legit everywhere, like hiding underground, hiding in cracks. They're, like, invisible, but they're freaking everywhere.
So it's not just a Deus Ex Machina ant?
Sorry?
Deus Ex Machina ant? That was a bit of a stretch. You know a Deus Ex Machina?
I don't...
In storytelling, or like in film, a Deus Ex Machina is when like something comes along that conveniently fixes the plot with like no sort of just a real convenient solution is like a Deus Ex Machina, when the main character had no way of getting out of their predicament, so the writer had to write
that was a good one. That was a good pun, because I would it's not, in fact,
nice.
it's not a Deus
Ex machina
I'm
ant.
I'm gonna say it wrong, and it's gonna be embarrassing. So we're just gonna say no. It wasn't just a convenient plot point. It was kind of it was relatively based in fact in that sense. But like, so jumping back to this like ant group and like why it's so. Well, I don't know. What do you want to hear about? Do you want to hear about an ant colony, or do you want me to tell you about like the ant hills first, like the buildings, the like structures?
I kind of want to learn about the
It's all
structures
wildly
because
cool.
I'm always like, I've seen a few cool things about ant structures. I mean, I'm a little perplexed by them just because there's always those little mounds on the outside of the hole. Like I don't know what's going on there. But then the other cool thing that I see is like when people pour
The ant
like-
casting?
yeah, like molten aluminium
Or the hill
down
casting?
ant hills or termite hills, and then dig out the structures, and they're just like super trippy and cool.
So like we will link one of these in the description for sure because it's wild, or you can just go to YouTube and just search up like ant hill casting, and it's where people like pour molten aluminium down into the ant hole, and it fills in all the little tunnels and stuff, and then they like dig let it solidify, let it cool down, solidify, then they dig that up and hose it down, and it's these like beautiful silver in color, like they're aluminium structures that just show all the intricate tunnels and stuff. And like I'll do my best to describe it with words, but like if you want a visual, like just search up that. Try not to think about all the poor ants living in their home having molten aluminium poured onto them. That's a bit sad, but like trying to think about that and just you can really like see these structures.
I'm sure it's a very quick death for them.
I hope so. But yeah, so like anthills, like you said, they like what you see is this little mound, but like that mound is the tip of the iceberg, baby. Like quite literally. I'm just going to use that analogy constantly throughout this because it is a really, really good one. Or another analogy that I saw was like an ice cream cone where like the mound is like the little ice cream on the top, and then coming down is the cone with the like crisscrosses if it's like a waffle cone.
Right. Yeah.
Coming down into the thing. But I like the ice cap one better. Iceberg. So these like ant hills, they seem tiny at first glance, but like up to like 250,000 ants can live inside the nest. It's essentially the nest. So you've got the mound on the top and the nest below.
Right.
And it's like essentially a giant nursery for baby ants, right? It's like it's the place where they raise all the babies. So there's one mother of like the entire ant colony, which is the queen. She roams around all day, like laying hundreds of eggs a day through all of these tunnels and stuff. And then there's all these worker ants, which are also all female. I'll go into that a bit later. But the worker ants that then essentially their job is to carry the babies all through the nest so that they can be in the kind of optimal temperature zone for them to grow. So for like a baby ant to grow, or like a little larva to grow, it needs to be between like 22 to 32 degrees Celsius. And ants don't have air conditioning or any way to sort of like temperature control their nest. So what they do is they take advantage of it being cooler like further down and like hotter up at the top. So let's start up at the top of the iceberg, or the top of your ice cream or whatever, the mound that you can see. So that's in the sun. So inside the mound, there's all these little pockets where the babies can get nice and warm because that gets quite hot with the sunlight. And that's good. They need that for a little bit. But if they were to stay there all day, they'd fry. So they have their little turn up in the hot pocket, we'll call it. And then there are these shafts, these like huge long vertical shafts that can go down like up to 2 meters down in the ground.
Oh.
So like think about like, I don't know, what's 2 meters? Like a
very
person,
tall
like a really tall person. Yeah, that's like taller than most people.
Yeah.
Length deep down into the ground is all these like vertical shafts that like change in temperature as you go down. And then like branching off all of these shafts are all these like crisscrossing little pockets of different heat varieties where the babies can like stop and have their little
Quick little cool down.
rests. Yeah, exactly.
Or warm up.
Or warm up, depending. Yeah, so it's like the job of these worker ants to ferry the young up and down all day. And then there's also like little pockets where they have like feeding chambers where they need to like feed the young. Because like what is really cool, this is less about the structure and more just like a segue about ants, is like you can think of an ant colony as like one superorganism, right? Like one creature. So the ants that go out and like collect the leaves and ferry like the food back to the, like, they can't actually eat solid food. So they bring the solid food back to the ant's nest where the larvae, the little like babies, they eat the solid food. And then there's these other ants that come and like drink the nutrients from the babies,
What?
store it in their stomach, and distribute it around to all the other worker ants and the queen.
That's like a
And it's
really
like,
weird backwards mother birding sort of thing.
So there's like so the babies are the stomach of the colony, and then the foragers are like the arms and the hands collecting the food. Like it's just it's wild.
It
They
is
all
really
have
cool
these-
to think of like a colony of ants as one organism like that. That does make a lot of sense, right? Just as like a
And that's exactly what they are. Like it's so crazy. They literally, because like, yeah, you can think of it as like, you know, similar to a human colony in the sense that like they live in these like structured colonies where every person has its different role and whatever. But the thing is, they do this without a government, without like first of all, without a means of like higher communication. So they can't actually like communicate with each other to pre-plan stuff. And there's not people in power making executive decisions and telling them what to do. There's another thing where Ant-Man, like, okay, I will say the science of like how he's able to control the ants is a little bit based in logic, in the sense that, you know, he claims, what's the line? It's like he can use the electromagnetic waves to stimulate the olfactory nerve centers of the ants. That makes sense in the sense, because I'll explain this more in a sec, but ants do use pheromones mainly, so smell and pheromones, to direct themselves and make decisions about where they go and what they do.
yeah.
So that makes sense, but like how he was able to send these electromagnetic waves, I don't know, the neuroscientist in me is like,
That's probably where
but
it
like they
starts
tried,
going
they
into
got
like
a
the
little,
fictional
you know.
liberty. Poetic
Exactly,
license.
science
you know.
fiction. Like, you know, science fiction is allowed to be science fiction, but, you know, I will acknowledge the fact that they didn't just say, oh, it's controlling the ants' brains. The fact that they specified it's controlling the olfactory centers, I was like, hey, that actually makes sense.
Because olfactory
ants-
is smell, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Olfactory is smell, and ants communicate via these chemical signals that work like smell. Like, yeah. But going back to, sorry, that was just like a little tangent, but like going back to, you know, thinking of these ants as a huge superorganism, like I was saying, you can think of it like a human community, but because they don't have that higher up governing power, it is more just like one creature, one thing operating. Like there's not, it's, and like, but that's the thing, everything works out and every like creature knows what to do. It's all because of this just like biologically timed cycle. So I'm going to break down the cycle, like the life kind of cycle a little bit, because it's also really weird how like the just the differing roles for male ants and female ants and the queen and the other workers. Like it's just, this blew my mind to like find out.
Because my understanding currently of like how ant colonies work, based off like what I learned in year 3 or something, is the
or from SimAnt.
From what? Sorry.
From SimAnt.
Oh, from SimAnt and from Ant-Man and from Ant-Man and the Wasp. Yeah, queen lays all the eggs, has all the babies. The females, they're all the workers, so they go out and get the food and bring it back in, and also carry the young around now, I've since learned. The males are the drones. Usually if an ant has wings, it's only the males that'll have wings. They're the only ones who can fly.
Or the queen.
Queens.
Or, sorry,
Some.
virgin queens, specifically.
Oh,
once a queen has
been
mated,
deflowered, she loses her
I'll
wings.
explain
Okay,
yeah.
sure.
But
yeah.
so she can settle down and start a colony. Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure what it is the male ants do, other than presumably fuck the queen.
Spoiler
and
alert,
fly.
nothing.
What?
Fucking nothing. It's hilarious. Okay, so let's start with the beginning of the cycle. You're very right. The males, the drones, are the ones that have wings. So all the winged males and then all the winged, like I said, virgin queens, the ones that don't already have their own established colony, from all the nearby colonies, they all kind of get up on the same sort of day, and they fly to like a central location to place like to mate. Sorry, a central place where they can all just like get it on, and they do this using pheromones. So like they're all starting to give off pheromones, and it guides them all to this like central breeding ground where they just have a mass ant orgy.
Nice.
Yeah, and so after mating, the males die because they're no longer needed. Their literal purpose in life, they sit around in their fucking ant's nest, playing video games, eating pizza, literally until they're developed enough to leave the nest, go fuck a queen, and then die.
Holy shit, that sounds awesome.
That is literally all male ants
Yeah.
do. They're useless.
I've got a quick question, actually. I've just thought of. Do the worker ants, the female worker ants, do they mate?
No, just
Okay.
the queen.
So do the worker ants have the capacity to get pregnant? Do they have like ant ovaries?
I am unsure about that, but I would assume no, given that they never
So are they actually
get
female?
pregnant and never give birth.
Or in an ant colony,
Yeah,
is it a case
yes.
of the queen is the only female, then the drones are the males, and then the workers are like
No. So
gendered?
I'll explain the difference. I mean, it's not really. I guess you could say it's gender.
Oh, sorry,
because
not
it's,
gender,
like, social-
asex.
I was gonna say yeah.
How
But
would
then
you
again,
say no
if you
sex?
view the ant colony asexual,
But that's
no,
sexuality,
doesn't- Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I
Lacking
can't
in
think of the
sex.
term,
I
but
don't
you know
know.
what I'm trying to say.
So the thing is about sex, and especially in like biological sex, especially in animals, like organisms that aren't humans, that we define what makes a biological male and a biological female. We define it based on certain characteristics in humans, and same in different animals. And ants don't just have the XY chromosome ovary like distinction that we use to distinguish between biological sex in humans. So scientists have created their own criteria about what makes a male ant and a female ant, and I'll explain it in a second. It's wild.
Okay,
It's
cool.
wild. Like, brace yourself.
Boy.
So essentially, after mating, the males die off. And then the few successful, well, the virgin, they're no longer virgin, the successful queens, the queens that have successfully mated and killed off their male once they're done. I don't know if they actually kill the male. I think the male just dies.
Is
of
there
its
more than
own,
one
like,
queen?
It's done.
Often in a colony?
No,
Okay.
because so normally, all this will sort of happen, but then there will be a successful monarch that comes out of it all. And then, she'll settle down, she'll lose her wings, and she'll begin laying eggs.
Right.
Hundreds of eggs a day. Now this is where biological sex gets differentiated after the eggs are laid.
Okay.
The queen chooses which eggs get fertilized. So she lays unfertilized eggs, right?
Like chickens.
She lays unfertilized eggs. They don't have any sperm. They don't have any genetic stuff from the male she's mated with.
Okay.
It's just purely her genetic information down into like an egg, unfertilized egg. Then she goes around selectively fertilizing different eggs, not all of them, with sperm that she has saved up from her previous mating ritual. Like, the guy's dead. She don't need him no more. She's got her sperm saved up that she goes along squirting onto like selective eggs.
God, just carrying
then-
around this sack of sperm. That's
Right. But then the twist. So the fertilized eggs grow up into being the female workers, right?
Yeah.
Or the females. Who then, care for the queen and her eggs, build and defend the colony, forage for food, do literally everything of use to the ant colony. The unfertilized eggs grow up into males.
What?
Whose only job is just to wait around until they're ready to leave the nest and reproduce, beginning the whole cycle from le get-go.
That is so weird. Intuitively, I would have thought it would be the other way around, because the eggs that you're fertilizing, you're adding, the sperm, the stuff from the male, that male genetic, not necessarily making it male, but like you're getting information from a male, whereas the unfertilized eggs are only getting information from the queen. But that's
I guess
able
if
to
you
make
think about it,
a male.
they need more information, because like men they have their one job. They don't need much. They just need to be able to get up, know when to follow pheromones and when to whip it out, right? the women need to be able to like distinguish into their different roles. So you have the future queens that come out of it. You have the ones that are the foragers that go out and find the food. You have the ones that defend the nest. You have the ones that traffic the babies. Gosh, move the babies up and down the nest. You have the ones that transfer the food between the things. You know, they have all these different roles. But like, I just want to come back to this like male unfertilized, female fertilized idea for a second, because this is what really blew my mind. Is if you think about it, right? So male ants can only ever have a mother. They can't have a father, right? And they can only ever have daughters. They can't have sons. Because if you think about it, their sperm is only ever going to contribute to a female, right?
Yeah.
Or they are going to be the unfertilized result of just a female. But they can have grandfathers and grandsons, because if their daughter gives birth, then that's like a grandchild, and if they're like mother's dad. So they like skip a generation. So females can have like mothers, fathers, daughters, sons, but males can only have mothers, daughters, or grandfather, or like grandparents and grandchildren.
That
I mean,
is so
never
weird.
alive within the same sort of like lifespan, I don't think. Or maybe actually, ants live a long time. It blows my mind. They can live up to like 20 years. Another fun
man.
fact. Crazy,
Yeah,
right?
that's crazy.
Ants, not all ants,
Yeah,
but like
okay.
some, live for a while, which is really cool. So like, yeah,
I guess
that's the wild thing about, the biological sex. And that's so, you know, I think it's just the queens. So the queen isn't the only quote unquote female. It's, you know, because the females then differentiate into their different roles. Some becoming
so what
future
then
queens,
defines
some
the work
becoming
ants
whatever.
as female? Is it just because they're not male that scientifically we've given
they
them
just-
the
yeah, they're-
categorization of female?
I'm not sure, because I'm not an entomologist, and I haven't looked into the nitty gritty of what defines it, except beyond the the most general definition, which is the if it's come about from a fertilized egg, it is a female.
Right.
I don't know why we've gone, that's the female and that's the male. I think because those are the ones that then give birth, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
'Cause I
not all
suppose
of them give
A
birth.
fertilized
but
egg, does that have
every single queen comes from a fertilized
Right.
egg. Therefore, it's the one that gives birth. Therefore, it's the one is female.
and is that just
but
sort of
not
like a
every
random
female
chance
can give
thing,
birth.
or can the
but
queen
that's just,
like move an egg to a warmer spot and be like, yeah, no, this is the queen
I
temperature.
don't know.
Queens will come out of this
Yeah,
one. Or is it just sort
I'm-
of a random chance thing?
I mean, I think it would be random chance in the sense that ants aren't making these decisions. Queens aren't going, oh, I decide that I like the shape of this egg. It has a nice shimmer to it. I'm going to move it to the queen zone, right? All of these things are just like biologically happening. And I'll explain, you know, the whole pheromone system in a hot sec. But yeah, I think, you know, there must be something probably epigenetic, like, you know, something about the environment that causes this differentiation. I'm not sure what it is, but like it wouldn't be a conscious choice for these ones to become this, these ones to become that. But there would be something in the way that they're raised or the way that they're whatever that, would cause their differentiation.
So do ants have free will?
But I would say no.
What about the
because
Oh no, sorry.
but then again, do humans have free will?
Depends
Don't
on
know. Is that a can of worms that we want to open? Probably not. Let's not go there. But no, because ants are literally following centered instructions. Like they are hardwired, like biologically, to follow pheromones. So we'll
Yeah.
explain this pheromone concept. Pheromones are like a chemical signal, and ants just follow rules, like chemical signals. And so this is why like ants are used a lot, and for studying the activity of ants is used a lot in computer modeling.
Yeah, I was just
And I'll
thinking that sounds a lot like coding.
Yeah. I'll explain why in a second, because like this is just another example of like nature doing something really, really well that humans can actually learn a lot from. But yeah, so to explain like how the ants do this, like so pheromones are just like this chemical signal that they give off, and there's like heaps and heaps and heaps of different types of ones, and they all mean different things. So like for example, one can serve as an alarm. So like if you kill an ant, it'll give off a like I'm dead signal that all the other ants in the surrounding
Hate that
area
dead
can
ant smell.
smell.
It's, the worst.
Smell essentially. Yeah, and that's an alarm for the ant colony that like there is a threat, someone has just died, right? Or there's like the sexy pheromones that like queens will give off when they're reaching like the end of their reproductive life. You know, there's a whole range of different signals. But one of the coolest ones that I thought, one of the ones that I thought was the coolest is how they know where to get food, or how they manage to communicate to each other without actually being able to communicate to each other, hey, I found a really good spot for food. And it's this thing called recruitment, where how they recruit other ants. So it's like if one ant finds like, oh, here's a tasty pizza slice I can steal all the crumbs from, I'm gonna go recruit my buddies and tell them to keep coming here for this pizza slice. And so the way they do that is they're searching an area, they find food. Then once they've found the food, they take it back to their nest. But once they've got food, they release a pheromone, they drop a chemical trail. They're like Hansel and Gretel leaving breadcrumbs as they walk all the way from the food back to their nest. Other ants then are attracted to this like trail of breadcrumbs, so they follow it. They too find the food. Then they find the food and once again leave their own trail of breadcrumbs as they come back. So as you can imagine, the more and more this happens, that we soon have just like a river of breadcrumbs going back to the nest. But the thing is, when the food runs out, obviously they'll go there, but then when they don't find food to carry back, they no longer leave breadcrumbs coming back. So eventually, once the food's run out, that chemical trail just like dissipates and they know not to search that area. And so that's how ants are very efficient at like, once they find something, they all know to go there, even though they can't, jump on their like Twitter and be like, hey mates, good piece of pizza in the kitchen.
If you've got an ant infestation, they're always kind of going in a straight line together.
Yeah, because they're following a trail of invisible breadcrumbs, essentially, that their friends have left behind to
and
signal,
also, like,
hey,
ant
food in
infestations
this way.
they always start out as like a couple of ants, and then there's a few more, and then there's a few more, and then they stop when you clear away the incriminating. Do you know
exactly
anything about I've heard talcum powder. Ants don't like talcum powder. If you get an ant infestation in your home, if you track down where the ants are coming from, whatever nook or cranny, just pour some talcum powder there, and that'll stop them in their tracks.
Interesting. I don't know why. Is there something? What is talcum powder? What is it made of? I don't know.
Yeah,
but like, what's it?
It's
what's
made of
it
talcum?
like? It's not.
Yeah, I don't know.
Right. Okay. It's made from talc. I'm Googling it. Talc, a mineral made up of magnesium, silicon, and oxygen. It absorbs moisture well. I guess it would actually I guess if it absorbs moisture, like it would be hard for them to like walk through potentially. That would be my guess. But I genuinely, no, I don't know about that one. Oh, another cool way that like ants interact or like manage to sort of spread communication without actually like, once again, jumping on their Twitter and being like, hey, don't search area B, already checked it out, mate. Like ants are very, very good at selectively, thoroughly, and efficiently searching a set area without like, double crossing over paths that they've already searched. And the way that works is because they can actually like, high five each other as such. I don't know. They're like, you put a bunch of ants in an area. If there's not very many ants, they just keep walking in a straight line to cover more ground. But you add more and more ants into that area. Every time an ant interacts with another ant, they like touch antennae and go, oh, hello,
cute.
mate. And then they turn around and walk in a different direction. Not like the opposite direction. The direction they move is random. And the more ants there are, the more convoluted and random that the ants' movements get. But they become very efficient at therefore searching a space and not searching spaces that have already been searched. And like this is what's used in computer modeling to like solve. So there's a thing, I don't know if you've heard of it. It's called the like traveling salesman problem.
I've not heard of this one.
So the traveling salesman problem is essentially like if you were given a list of cities and the distance between each pair of cities, like can you calculate like what is the shortest possible route that visits every single city and returns to the original city? So it's just like what is the most efficient way to travel between all these places without, doubling back on yourself, or like figure out the most efficient route. And this is like a common, analogy simulation thing in computer models. It, helps optimize like internet searches and like a really cool way that it's been used is like you get a bunch of robots, right? And you want them to like say search a minefield or search a burning building, and you don't want some sort of central control. You don't want to have to be there with your little remote control making each of these robots search the area. You want to be able to just program them to like thoroughly and efficiently search the entire area based on, and they use like the ant system to do this. Is like every time the robots interact with each other, they change their movement patterns, and they essentially function like a searching swarm of ants because it's better than anything humans could come up with on their own. So like credit to the ants.
Fuck yeah, that probably
How cool
saved
is
a lot
that?
of lives.
Yeah, like it's actually really freaking cool. But I just want to like wind up the ant talk with just some like really fucking metal facts about ants. Or about different ants, I should say. So like I read a few different things. Some sources said about 14,000 species of ants. One I read said 30,000 species of ants. I'm not sure how many thousand species of ants, but it's safe to say there's many.
Yes.
And they're all different. And so that's one thing that Ant-Man also did really well, I think, is that they didn't just have, hey, these are the ants and they can do all of these things. They had, I think there were 4 specific different ones in the movie that they stated. There was the bullet ant, there was the crazy ant.
Probably a fire
I don't
ant.
remember. I should have written it down. Probably a fire ant and something else. And they gave them different roles that were like actually relevant to different things that these ants could do. But we're not going to talk about the Ant-Man ones, except for when they're accurate. I'll bring it up. But I found just a collection and I picked a handful of my favorite, most just like badass metal things that an ant can do.
Lay it on me.
We'll start with the first one, which is everyone's heard, and they definitely also say this in Ant-Man, that ants can carry 50 times their body weight, right? Yeah. We've all heard that one. Not every ant can carry 50 times its body weight. It's important to note that. But in fact, the leafcutter ant can carry 50 times its body weight. And so the leafcutter ant, what's really cool about them, they invented farming, essentially, like long before humans did. So what they do, they don't eat leaves. They're called leafcutter ants because one ant, like they have different sizes, and I think it's like the biggest one carries the leaf back to the thing, the next size like cuts it up, and then the next ones feed it. Essentially, they have a farm of fungus. They live with this fungus and they eat the fungus, and the fungus eats the leaves. So the ants go out, collect the leaves, bring it back, feed the fungus, and then they eat the fungus. And they're the ones that can carry like 50 times their body weight, and they just like shovel these massive ass leaves back, feed their fungus, and then eat the fungus.
Fungus.
It's
Is that
so cool.
a farm, or is that technically like rearing livestock?
Well, I mean,
because they're
would you not say that like farms also, I would say that farms, I think of a farm as having livestock and plants, right?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, no, because I guess even with plants, you have to like feed them,
And
so
I mean,
to speak. Yeah.
Fungi they're not animals, nor are they plants. So like it doesn't fit either analogy, but like I think it loosely fits into that. It's the point of they are growing stuff for them to consume, and they are looking after that stuff by feeding it, watering it, whatever, they are doing the farming.
Society
but anyway,
built on agriculture. You gotta love it.
Right? Ants, amazing. The next cool ant, it's called the honeypot ant. So we all know what ants, they're tiny, right? So these ants, the honeypot ants, what they do, they're able to store food, and they're called honeypot ants because their abdomen blows up and they can get to the size of grapes.
Bruh.
Yeah, they
What?
grow up into giant grapes of just like all this like liquidy, sugary, probably from plants. So it would
Is that
be
just
like
the abdomen that
fructose or
gra-
whatever.
gets
Yeah,
up a grape
the
size,
abdomen
and the
grows
rest of them
up
is just
into the size of it.
ant-sized?
Yeah.
So they're just
Yeah.
running around with these big ass bubble butts.
Until they run into someone that's hungry, and then then what happens? Okay, it's so, I don't know whether to be disturbed or like, but what happens is the hungry ant will go up, it'll like rub the antennae of the bloated ant, and the bloated ant will like regurgitate its load, for want of a better
Yes, I do want a better term.
Yes, it will release the food via its mouth, and the other ants will get to eat it.
That's
disgusting,
crazy.
right? But like also so cool. So next one, army ants. Army ants attack in groups of 100,000 or more, and they feed on like everything in their path, ranging from bugs to like small reptiles. They eat small reptiles.
What?
Ants. Swarms of 100,000. It made me think of that scene from what's the Indiana Jones movie? Is it Crystal Skull, where they have the ants that just like swarm and like it's like that, but less crazy.
some
Like they
fire
don't go
ants do
for
that as
humans,
well.
but yeah, probably.
Like I watched a video of a military person recounting some of their training where they had to like get from one side of this jungle to another. And I had a partner with them. There were like search teams out for them, and they had to do it stealthily and not be found. I can't remember what it was training for, but this guy, while he was hiding, accidentally got his hand in a log, and this
Oh,
log
no,
was an
fire
entire like
ants.
fire ant's nest, and he didn't notice until the ants had already like swarmed up half his body, and he like failed the training because he started screaming and rushing out, and they were like, you know, attended to him, and he almost died because like
Yeah,
they do have
fuck.
small amount of venom, and they can kill people. Swarms of ants can kill people.
Oh, they can. And I'm gonna like, so the fire ant venom is actually like, I'll go into it in a sec, but like it's really alkali, and that's really important to remember, because there's these other ants that can do this really flippin' cool thing, that I'll talk about in a hot sec. So remember the fire ant. But it's also like, while we're on the note of the fire ant, actually, fire ants can do this like really cool thing that was also a thing in Ant-Man. Do you remember the scene with the ant raft? Where like
the
Ant-Man's
floaty
standing on the
boys,
ant
where
raft,
they all
and
kind of
they're
like clump together and float on water somehow.
yeah. So that's a thing. Like, there's a specific type of fire ant that lives in Brazil, in like this areas that are like really prone to flooding. And so when a flood happens, they like create this living raft by like hooking their legs and their mouths together and so they can carry their queen safely on top. And they do this until the flood subsides. So like literally for weeks sometimes.
Gosh.
Like they hold these living rafts to protect their queen floating on water for weeks.
Do the bottom ants die? Do some of the ants drown?
No, I think they maybe like rotate through in like a constantly rotating
kind of like penguin
thing.
circles.
I think, I'm not sure, but yeah, no, they can do it, and that's a real thing. So that was a thing in Ant-Man that was like, no, I like it. Yeah, that's a thing that ants can actually do, which is insanely cool. But okay, so I think my favorite type of ant, and this was also one that was in Ant-Man, was the crazy ant. Which, like, first of all, you got the name the crazy ant. That's already you know this is gonna be good. But these guys are like hardcore, man. So they can actually shoot formic acid, right? They can shoot formic acid, and the
Bruh.
way that they use this to like catch their prey, right? So there was an example of like these red crabs that were like endangered, and then there was an ant infestation, and like they killed all these crabs, and because what happened is they shoot the formic acid into the eyes of the crabs, which then like blinds them. Then the crabs start like frothing at the mouth, and they die within a few hours. It's like hardcore.
What?
Oh, and then the ants eat them from the inside out.
Oh yeah, they would, wouldn't they?
And then there's like also some reports of like other crazy ants like in different places attacking baby birds in a similar way and like shooting them with this formic acid and like deforming them and then like eating them from the inside out.
That is wild. Those ants are brutal.
But it gets better. So this is where we come back to that like fire ant venom that you were talking about, that like, yeah, it hurts a lot for humans. It can, in some extreme cases, it can kill humans. If it's a bug, that bug's dead meat, right?
Yeah.
Unless that bug is a crazy ant. So there's a type of crazy ant that has learnt to protect itself against fire ant venom. So remember, crazy ants shoot this formic acid. So what these ants do, they cover themselves in their own formic acid to create like an anti-venom, because like I said, this venom is really alkali. What's the opposite of alkali? Acid.
Yeah.
So they can neutralize this venom by shooting their own formic acid on themselves and neutralizing this venom.
Shooting their own venom, not formic acid, because their own thing's alkali. So they're not shooting formic acid on themselves.
No. Yeah, they are. So the fire ants attack the crazy ants with their alkali fire ant venom.
Oh,
the crazy ants cover themselves in formic acid to protect themselves from the alkali venom from the fire ant.
Right, I got the venom and the other one mixed up. Yep.
Yeah, so the fire ant venom is alkali.
Yep.
But the formic acid from the crazy ants is the acid that essentially neutralizes it. And so then crazy ants will kick the butts of fire ants.
Man.
Which fire ant stings hurt a lot more to humans than crazy ants, but I would argue that crazy ants are actually more annoying to humans, because unless you find yourself in the unfortunate situation of being stung by a bunch of fire ants, crazy ants are the ones that like to really like wreak havoc in houses and stuff. And this was in Ant-Man, and this was actually accurate, and well, accurate-ish, like accurate to an extent. So there's like a scene, I don't know if you remember, in Ant-Man where like all the ants, they use it in the break-in, and the ants swarm into the electrical appliances and like can short circuit it.
Yeah.
So crazy ants, like that's a legit thing. They love to come into homes, and they're attracted to electrical appliances and can short circuit them. So like there's reports of like air conditioning units and like phones and stuff. Yeah, and they full on just come into the electrical equipment and just like
mobiles?
I don't
God, imagine picking
like
up your mobile phone and ants are crawling out of it. Oh.
And then it's been short circuited because so crazy ants are officially, I think, my favorite ant after this.
How big are crazy ants? Are they like those little tiny?
They're not as big as they're not as big as fire ants.
Okay.
I don't know if they're the smallest. But
man.
Yeah.
Do you know fire ants? Do they sting or do they bite? One of the wildest things I heard is that some ants actually have a stinger on the back of their abdomen, like wasps and bees, and they actually sting people with a stinger. Well, other ants bite
that's
you
a thing.
With their pincers. That's.
I am uncertain which the crazy ant does, but yeah, no, there are definitely ants with stingers. So sometimes when you look up and you see a wasp, it might just be like a flying stinger ant. I don't know. Crazy.
Either way, don't let it sting you.
Yeah, either way, 10 out of 10 would avoid, or like 0 out of 10 would. You know, the point is, ants are hardcore, right? Like, are you as enthused by ants as I am now? Or suddenly this ant group on Facebook has just taken on a whole new level of excitement for me, and I kind of want to just spend my day shit posting things that are scientifically accurate.
Well, if you ever get bored of the shit posting group where we all pretend to be ants in an ant colony, after the invasion of the office shit posting group, a piece was formed by a smaller fringe compromise group being made that I am also a part of, which is a Facebook group where we all pretend to be ants working in an office together.
Oh my god, that's
so it's
amazing.
all of the office banter but said in ant speak. It's wild.
Man, the internet is just such a cool place, right? Oh, no, I found one. Sorry, I was just like scanning back over my notes while listening to you, and I just found one other like cool little tidbit that I wanted to look up. And you can also, I'll probably chuck the link to this video in the description. But I was watching this thing about like the pheromones and how strong they are, and the fact, and I think this also kind of highlights that it's not a conscious decision. So, like, for example, much like male humans who seem to claim that men can't help themselves, quote, cough, uncomfortable shudder. That is not true for humans. I'm just going to go out there and scientifically say that now. Self-control is a real thing that humans do have. Ants do not. Ants do not.
Right.
They're literally following their chemical instructions like a computer. And there was this wicked-ass video of a queen female ant, which is a lot bigger than the male. So picture it as like bigger, right? Literally being eaten head first by this spider. But the pheromones that she was giving off were so strong that swarming around her, lower region was a bunch of male ants still trying to mate with her, even though she was mid getting eaten by a spider that was right there that was also going to probably eat them. But the pheromones that she was giving out was so strong that the drones just kept trying to bang her despite the
doesn't matter, had
doom.
sex.
Well, I mean, they're going to die at the end of sex anyway, so I guess get it in while you can.
Yeah.
But yeah, right?
Oh
like,
my god, that is wild.
Insane. But I think that's all I have to say about ants.
I guess I'm really
kind of
anticipating what the listener question's going to be.
Yeah. That's because I keep saying kind of, right? Now, listener question, and I just think this is poetry, right? Our listener question, I'm going to read it out. It's from Riley. And is it possible to shrink matter similar to seen in movies like Ant-Man or Honey, I Shrunk the Kids? And does the science of something being smaller actually make it stronger? And so that's the question.
So many opinions about this.
All right, I'm going to let you go first then. Unleash it.
So
opinionate away.
Love the movie Ant-Man. It's hilarious. Paul Rudd, he's a treasure.
Paul Rudd is a national treasure.
And for as much scientific...
Speaking of Can I just shout out? Am I allowed? Yeah, I'm gonna shout out one of the. I mean, I'll link it in the description as well. One of the things I watched, it was a collaboration between Vsauce and Paul Rudd, where they pretty much look at this exact question about what would happen, like the science of what would happen if you shrunk. And it's Vsauce and Paul Rudd's in the video.
Okay, I need to watch that. That is.
And I'll send you the link. I'll link it in the description. They'll probably do a better job of describing it than we do.
Yeah.
Definitely worth a watch. But anyway, we're gonna give it our best shot. So Matt, sorry, continue. National treasure Paul Rudd.
Yeah, no. So like the premise that Ant-Man gives for how the shrinking technology works is that it reduces the distance between the molecules in matter. So therefore making it smaller. But, and they do point it out, it is maintaining its mass, therefore making it more dense. So, 80 kilo person getting shrunk down to the size of an ant, it's still going to be 80 kilos. So, it's going to be an ant. So, like the reasoning they give there is, and then that's how they explain Ant-Man's being super strong and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And just, one of my biggest gripes is that what they then, like, already there's some problems with that. But two main things that happen in the film of Ant-Man. So spoilers for Ant-Man ahead. One, when he gets super big at one point, but they kind of they keep him super strong when he's super big. They kind of break their own logic there because if you're expanding the molecules out, you're still going to be 80 kilos, but now you're just going to be a lot bigger. So I'll buy into your logic. If you make it when he's really big, he's really, really weak and like useless. But they don't do that. They make him super strong.
No.
And then the other thing that annoys me about the film is when they go, like, a big plot point is going subatomic and going into the quantum realm.
Oh boy,
which, like,
do I have some thoughts?
That's all well and good. Sure, go into the quantum realm. There's some good plot points there. But your whole shrinking technology is based on the fact that you're reducing the distance between molecules.
Between atoms.
How are you supposed to get smaller than an atom?
Yeah.
If you're limited by the size of like the number of atoms, okay, you reduce all the space so all the atoms are clumped together and touching, and now what? Now what? They smush together.
You
it was just the ultimate smush. Sorry, yeah.
You're dead. You're dead. You're dead for lots of other reasons as well that I'm not even going to go into, such as like how would you be able to breathe oxygen if you're smaller than it?
Yep. How could you
how
see
would your
if you're
eyes
smaller than a
see
photon?
anything? Your vocal cords you would speak very high. Anyway, all of that, like, let's just assume that somehow the Ant-Man suit is able to protect him from all of this, other stuff. You're right. There's a lot of other issues, but like for a moment, let's just look at, hypothetically, like Riley said, is it possible to shrink matter? Like seen in Ant-Man and Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. I don't know how they do it in Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. It's been a long time since I have seen that movie. But there is no special suit to protect them. So I'm going to go ahead and say they would just be dead. Straight up impossible from that point of view. Let's have a look at the Ant-Man logic for a second, which, like you said, apparently reduces the space between molecules. We're going to completely ignore the whole subatomic plot hole for a moment because you're right. That's just doesn't make any sense with their logic. And let's just have a look at whether their logic would be able to make someone smaller. Now, the thing is they word it, space between molecules. Like atoms are already touching, right? So the only way you could hypothetically bring them closer together is if you meant like the nuclei of the atom. So if you think about an atom, it's got like the nuclei in the middle and then it's got electrons circling.
Yeah.
It's got the nucleus, in the middle. The nuclei is plural, and it's got the electrons circling that, right? In theory, any space that could be reduced in that atom would be space between the electrons, meaning that then the nuclei of the molecules move closer together, and you could argue that you've moved them closer together. Now, there's a lot of reasons why electrons aren't any closer together. It's because they literally like repel each other, right?
Yeah.
So like the physics of moving it close together. But I did manage to find one little like element of maybe this is hypothetically possible-ish, is that if you were able to increase the mass of the electrons, the space between them wouldn't have to be as big. And it's complicated science to explain why, but just hear me out for a second.
Okay.
And they're doing these experiments. There's a form of electron that's actually, it's not quite an electron, but it's like a heavier version that we're working on, seeing if we can move electrons into this heavier version, which then if you can extrapolate that, if you are able to convert electrons into this heavier version of themselves, potentially they could squish close together, potentially you could get stuff closer together, but like it would be super unstable and it would be, you know, I don't know. It's very, 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 very futuristic, maybe grasping at straw science. But I'm gonna just go ahead and say no, it is not possible to shrink matter.
Yeah.
But let's go into the second part of the question of does the science of something being smaller, being stronger, actually work? And go, okay, let's assume that we can shrink them. You brought up an excellent point about density, and I'm going to follow that up with some numbers. So I have the exact quote from the Ant-Man movie because this is, I went deep here.
All right.
And so the justification they give, word for word, is when you're small, energy is compressed. So you have the force of a 200-pound man behind a fist 1/100th of an inch wide. You're like a bullet. So, by their own admission, you are right. He is still a 200-pound man, which I looked up in kilograms is 90 kilograms. So he's still 90 kilograms. Yeah, you were close. So when he's small, he's still 90 kilograms. That is canonic. That is what they say, word for word. There's like a scene where he's like running on a record, like a record spinning on a record player, like a DJ, and it's like a treadmill. Like, okay, first of all, let's ignore the density fact of like by making it smaller, it's going to be, there's other problems there. Let's just take 90 kilos, put 90 kilos on a record or on a record player. Like it's good that, no, that doesn't work.
That's
but
some
then,
strong ass vinyl.
And then if you shrink it, and you have like the same mass because you've just removed the space between the molecules or between the electrons, however you want to look at it. And you have the same mass, but like on a tiny, tiny thing. The density that you actually come out with by their own sort of numbers, I looked this up, someone, I didn't do these calculations, someone else did, but there are people in the world that have done this because there are nerds, we exist. The density he would have is 200 billion kilograms per cubic meter, which is approximately the density of a white dwarf, aka a star that has used up all its hydrogen and collapsed in on itself due to gravity.
Nice.
That is the density that we're looking at for Ant-Man. So not only would he fall through the record player, he would fall through the fucking planet. Like he would fall through anyone he land on. He runs on a gun at some stage. He would just like, it's like say you're trying to push your finger into like, I don't know, your mattress, right? It's not going to go through, but you get a pinprick and you put the same force behind it. The pinprick's going to go straight through because the surface area is smaller. It's just going to pierce it.
Yeah.
So Ant-Man's just going to fall through it. Like at one point he's riding an ant. Actually, at several points he rides an ant. That's a major plot point is that he can ride this flying ant that he names
but
Anthony,
ants are real
which,
strong.
Like,
Not that
well, so
strong.
okay, let's think about that. Ants can hold 50 times their body weight. He weighs 90 kilos. So the ant would have to weigh 1.8 kilos to hold this 90 kilo guy.
God,
so ignoring the density issue once again and just thinking about the straight mass issue, think about a 2 kilogram ant. That's what would be required. That definitely wasn't a 2 kilogram ant. So, like, in theory...
We could start seeing 2 kilogram ants, though, if we switch to hydrogen energy.
Yeah, exactly. And if you don't understand that reference, listen back to our previous episode about hydrogen and giant millipedes. But, yeah, so essentially to answer Riley's question, very disappointingly, and to tear... After I've just spent, like, you know, an hour building Ant-Man up for, you know, getting all the ant science right, which it did to an extent, so, like, props to them for that. From a physics perspective... No, you cannot shrink people like that. It would not work. But like also it is a movie. It's a science fiction movie and like Honey, I Shrunk the Kid. Like it's a movie. Like have an imagination. Like I'm not hating on Ant-Man. I'm not hating on, you know, science fiction movies that get the science wrong. The whole point is that like maybe sometime in the future we will be able to do this. In this case it seems unlikely, but there's a lot of things that this magic suit would have to somehow be able to do that it isn't explained for, yeah. But, like, also, yeah, to answer the second part of the question, would being smaller make you stronger? Like, it wouldn't necessarily make you stronger, but, like, yeah, it would give you more of a density. It would make you stronger in the sense if you were trying to break through the earth, you would. You would fall through the earth. You would have that strength. But that's just gravity acting on density. So, I don't know how... It doesn't build your muscle mass. Like, you know, Scott Lang could still only punch the same as Scott Lang could punch. Like, they kind of... In the movie, that's the other thing. They kind of... go, oh well, if ants can carry 50 times their body weight, then if a human shrunk down to ant size will be able to carry 50 times its human weight. But it's like, that's not how it scales. Surely if he was ant sized, it just
Yeah. The maths don't
So-
quite line up. I mean, like Ant-Man.
no. So sorry, Riley. Sorry to crush your soul, but focus on the ant science. The ant science is good.
I remember when Ant-Man first came out and I watched it. I didn't actually like it that much because I was just so hung up on the physics being
Same.
awful.
But when I
then
rewatched
when
it
you
last
rewatch
night,
it and you push all that aside, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. It's a movie. It's fun. It's a good
but
laugh.
also like having spent like most of yesterday learning all this stuff about ants and then finishing off my day watching Ant-Man and seeing how much of the ant science they get right, which I never realized before. I was like, actually, I
Yeah, I
really
didn't know
enjoyed
that.
it. So, you know, the moral of this podcast would be give it a shot.
They
But
got the ant
yeah,
right, but
and also
not the man.
yeah. But you know, it's a bit of fun, right? Superhero movies, they're just a bit of fun.
Like, this isn't a universe where you've got, like, a purple alien collecting literal god rocks to, you know,
That
alter
can
time and
snap
stuff
people,
like that. Like, if we're getting
snap
hung up
50%
on
of
the
the
bending
population
physics
into
for getting real
disappearance.
small, then, you know, we're doing something wrong with the Marvel franchise.
Exactly. It's far from the biggest scientific inaccuracy. But that's not the point of those movies. So
Yeah.
that's all I have to say about that. So I don't know. Hope you guys enjoyed that and maybe you feel inspired to go watch Ant-Man now. We are not getting sponsored by Ant-Man, but I would just like to Disney, Marvel, if you're listening, I wouldn't mind a coin or two in my direction. I just defended you. You're welcome. And with that, guys, like if you want more stuff like this or just keep track of when our episodes pop out, you can follow us on social media at Curiosity Rat on Twitter or Instagram, or search us on Facebook. And, you know, like we said, listener questions, fire them at us. Shoot us more. I kind of really liked that, breaking down the science in a movie. Shoot me more questions like that. That was fun. I do like to nerd out, so hit us up at curiosityrat@gmail.com. I think that's all I have to say. Matt, do you
Yeah.
have anything else?
Nah, that pretty much sums it all
Yeah?
up.
Nah?
Yeah, nah.
Nah, yeah, nah, yeah.
Looking forward
Peace out,
to coming
birdies.
back next time.
Curiosity. Kill the rat. Curiosity.